I never imagined the walls of my own home would feel like strangers watching me. For 40 years this house was my pride. Every corner had my story written in it. My late husband, Richard, built it with his own hands. Every brick held our laughter, our fights, our dreams. And I thought foolishly that family would always protect what we built. But I was wrong. That morning started like any other. I was watering the roses when I noticed Olivia, my daughter-in-law, whispering on her phone in the backyard. Her tone was sharp, urgent. She turned her back the moment she saw me watching. Something in my gut tightened. You know that feeling when silence suddenly feels heavy? It was that. Olivia married my son, Ethan, 3 years ago. She was charming, polite, the kind of woman who always smiled but whose eyes didn't. First, I thought it was just nerves, a young woman trying to fit in. But over time, that smile became her mask. She took control of everything in the house. The bills, the papers, even Ethan's bank accounts. I didn't complain. I was old, retired, and I didn't want trouble. But sometimes silence becomes your biggest mistake. A week before everything fell apart, Olivia came into the kitchen holding a stack of papers. "Mom," she said sweetly, "we're just updating some home documents for insurance, nothing big." Her tone was honey, but her eyes avoided mine. I took the papers and my heart skipped a beat. It wasn't insurance. It was property transfer paperwork. My name, my husband's name, the house deed. Every word screamed danger. I looked up at her, and she smiled like she'd done nothing wrong. "Just sign at the bottom," she said. "Ethan and I will handle the rest." I didn't sign. Instead, I told her I needed to read it carefully. Her face froze for a second, just a second, before she forced a laugh. "Oh sure, take your time, Mom." She left the kitchen, but I noticed the panic flicker behind her eyes. That's when I knew something was terribly wrong. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in the living room staring at those papers. The way she'd worded things, the missing legal terms, it all seemed planned. And Ethan, my son, he had no idea. He was away on business, trusting his wife to handle things. My mind kept spinning. Why would she do this? Why would Olivia want the house in her name? And then I remembered her recent arguments with Ethan about money, debt, and her new investment plans. The whispers, the late night calls, the hidden documents she never wanted me to touch. The puzzle pieces started falling into place. The next morning, I called my old friend Margaret, a retired lawyer. She came over right away. We sat in the dining room as I handed her the papers with shaking hands. She adjusted her glasses, read every line, and then looked up at me with a grim face. "May," she said quietly, "she's trying to sell your house." My heart stopped. "Sell it?" I whispered. Margaret nodded. "There's a buyer's clause here. She's preparing a transfer of ownership, but she can't finalize it without your signature." I felt the world tilt beneath me. All these years of trust, of calling her family, and she wanted to sell the very home I built with my husband. Margaret told me not to confront her yet. "Let her think you don't know," she advised. "She'll make a mistake soon enough." It was the hardest advice I ever had to follow. That day I acted normal. I smiled. I asked Olivia about dinner. I even complimented her new dress. But inside my heart was burning. When she left the house that afternoon, I followed her quietly from a distance. She went straight to a real estate office. I watched from across the street as she handed them a folder, my folder. I couldn't hear what she said, but I saw her shake hands with a man in a suit. And that smile, that same smile she wore when she lied to me, it broke something inside me. That night I confronted Ethan. He was shocked. "Mom, that's impossible," he said, his voice trembling. "Olivia wouldn't do something like that." I showed him the papers. His face went pale. He sank into the couch, staring at the signatures, the forged dates, the fake notary stamp. "She said these were for insurance," he muttered, more to himself than to me. I didn't know whether to comfort him or shake him awake. My son, my only son, had married someone who saw our home as nothing more than a check to cash. Over the next few days, I played my part carefully. I pretended to believe her lies. I even made her tea in the mornings. Every "thank you, Mom" from her lips felt like poison. But I waited, because sometimes silence is not weakness, it's strategy. Margaret helped me prepare everything. We made copies of the documents. We contacted the registry office quietly, and we waited for the day she tried to make the sale official. 3 days later it happened. Olivia came home dressed perfectly, hair done, makeup flawless, and a folder clutched in her hand. She told Ethan she was meeting a client, but I knew exactly where she was going. The registry office. I followed her again. My heart pounded so loud I could barely breathe. Margaret was already waiting nearby. We had informed the registrar that no sale could proceed without my presence, the real owner. And that's when the real story began. I watched as Olivia walked into the office, confident, smiling. She handed over the documents and waited, tapping her polished nails against the desk. Then the registrar looked up. "Ma'am," he said, "we need the owner's signature in person." For the first time, Olivia's smile faltered. "I stepped out from the corner. Looking for me?" I asked. Her eyes widened in shock. She froze. For a second, the entire office went silent. That was the moment moment betrayal met truth. Her plan had fallen apart right in front of everyone. But that confrontation, that storm of emotions, it had just begun. Because I wasn't done yet. Not after what she tried to do. And what happened next changed everything. The moment our eyes met, time froze. Olivia's face drained of color. Her lips parted, but no words came out. It was like watching a mask crack in slow motion. All that fake sweetness melting into raw panic. The registrar looked confused. "Ma'am, are you the owner?" he asked me gently. I straightened my back and nodded. "Yes, this house belongs to me, and I believe there's been some kind of misunderstanding." But we both knew it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was betrayal, plain and cruel. Olivia tried to laugh it off. "Oh, Mom, you didn't have to come all the way here," she stammered. Her voice was trembling, her fingers twitching around that cursed folder. "I was just finalizing some paperwork for Ethan. That's all." The registrar frowned. He turned the documents toward me. "Ma'am, your daughter-in-law claimed she had your authorization to transfer ownership, but this signature," he pointed at the forged one, "it doesn't match your records." I could feel the room watching us. Every whisper, every stare. Olivia's smile was fading fast, and for once, she couldn't charm her way out. I leaned closer to her. My voice was low, almost calm. "Tell me, Olivia," I said, "did you think I wouldn't find out? That you could sell the house Richard built and I'd just disappear?" Her eyes darted around. She looked like a trapped animal, scared, desperate. "Mom, please, it's not what it looks like." But it was exactly what it looked like. Ethan arrived moments later. Margaret had called him, and when he rushed through those doors, his face was pale with confusion. "Mom? Olivia? What's going on?" He looked at the registrar, then at me, and finally at his wife, the woman he thought he knew. I handed him the folder. "Why don't you read for yourself, son?" I said quietly. He flipped through the pages, the signatures, the fake notary, the property transfer request. And then I saw it, that moment when realization hits and the heart breaks. "Olivia, what is this?" he whispered. Her voice cracked. "Ethan, I swear, I was only trying to help. We needed money for the business, and I thought..." He cut her off, his voice shaking with disbelief. "You thought what? That you'd sell my mother's home behind her back? That you'd forge her name and walk away like nothing happened?" The registrar cleared his throat awkwardly. "Sir, this is a serious offense. We'll need to report the attempt." Olivia's knees nearly buckled. She clutched Ethan's arm, sobbing now. "Please, don't let them call the police." I didn't mean to. I panicked. Her tears fell fast, but they didn't move me. I'd seen real grief before. This was fear, not guilt. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the woman she'd been hiding all along. The greed, the arrogance, the entitlement. Everything she had built her image on was falling apart. Margaret whispered to me, "We have enough to press charges if you want." But I shook my head. No, that wasn't what I wanted. Revenge, yes, but not prison. Not yet. I turned to the registrar. "Please record in the file that this attempt was unauthorized," I said clearly, "and mark this property as legally protected. No future transfer can happen without my verified signature. In person." He nodded and stamped the papers with a heavy thud. That sound felt like justice, like closure, at least for the moment. Then I faced Olivia again. "Go home," I told her. "Pack your things. You've taken enough from this family." On the drive back, the silence was unbearable. Ethan didn't say a word. His hands gripped the steering wheel, his jaw tight. I could see the tears he was holding back. The kind a man hides because he doesn't want his mother to see him breaking. When we reached home, Olivia rushed upstairs, slamming doors, sobbing like a victim. I sat on the couch, staring at the photo of Richard on the mantel. He used to say, "You can tell a person's soul by how they treat what they didn't build." And now I finally understood what he meant. That evening, Ethan came downstairs with a suitcase in his hand. "Mom," he said softly, "I'm going to my friend's place for a while. I can't stay here with her right now." I nodded, but my heart broke for him. He was torn between the mother who raised him and the wife who betrayed them both. As he left, Olivia stood at the top of the stairs, watching him go. Her face was streaked with tears, but her eyes still held that same cold calculation, like she was already planning her next move. And deep down I knew this wasn't over. The next few days were eerily quiet. Olivia stayed in her room, barely speaking. I could hear her whispering on the phone sometimes, but every time I got close, she'd hang up. I changed the locks on my office and moved the house documents to a safe deposit box. Margaret came by again, helping me set up legal protections. I felt secure for the first time in weeks, but I should have known better. Peace doesn't last long when greed is involved. One night around midnight, I heard the creak of the front door. Soft footsteps down the hall. I got up quietly, my heart pounding. Through the dark, I saw a shadow moving toward my study. It was Olivia. She was holding a flashlight and something else, my house keys, the ones I thought I'd hidden. I stood there, watching her open the cabinet where my old documents used to be. She cursed under her breath when she saw the empty spot. Then she turned and froze because I was standing right there in the doorway. "Looking for something?" I asked. Her hand trembled. She tried to smile. "Mom, I was just checking if we had any papers left to fix things, but I'd heard enough lies to last a lifetime. My patience was gone. Don't call me Mom, I said quietly. You lost that right the moment you tried to steal my home. Her lips quivered. Please just listen. I didn't mean to. I cut her off. You didn't mean to? You forged my name, tried to sell the only thing Richard left behind, and now you sneak around my house at midnight. Her silence said everything. I pointed to the door. Get out. She blinked in disbelief. What? You heard me. Leave. Tonight. Her jaw clenched. For a moment I thought she'd argue, but instead she gave me one last glare, cold and sharp. You'll regret this, she hissed. Then she walked out, just like that, and I stood there in the dark, wondering if that was a promise or a threat. What I didn't know then was that she wasn't done. Not even close, because a woman like Olivia doesn't lose quietly. She plots. She waits. And her revenge, when it comes, cuts deeper than you can imagine. The night she left, I thought it was over. The storm had passed. The house felt cold but peaceful, like it was finally breathing again. I remember sitting by the window, watching her car disappear into the fog, and thinking, maybe justice had been served. But peace is just the silence before the next betrayal. And Olivia, she wasn't the kind of woman to accept defeat. Days turned into weeks. Ethan stopped by sometimes, trying to act normal, but the pain in his eyes gave him away. He still loved her, despite everything she'd done. That was his weakness, and I feared she knew it. I tried to fill the house with life again. I hosted tea with Margaret, spent time in the garden, visited the church on Sundays. But even as I smiled and nodded, a part of me stayed alert, because I knew women like Olivia, they'd disappear, only to return when you least expect it. One afternoon, about a month later, a strange letter arrived. No sender, just my name, written in a familiar hand. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a notice from the local property board. According to it, my house was listed for sale. My heart nearly stopped. I read it again, twice, my hand shaking. The address was mine. The file reference number matched my deed. But how? I had already blocked all attempts to transfer ownership. That's when I saw it, the date, filed under my husband's old documents, the one she had tried to steal that night. I rushed to Margaret's office immediately. She took one look at the paper and frowned. Someone's trying to reopen the file through a loophole, she said. They're using Richard's old signature from archived records. My knees went weak. Can she do that? I asked. Not legally, Margaret said, but if the wrong person approves it before verification, the process could move forward temporarily. It's fraud again. That word, fraud, echoed in my head. It was like she had found a new way to strike back. We filed an emergency hold that same day. I spent hours at the municipal office, explaining everything, showing every piece of evidence. The staff there were kind but cautious. Mrs. Thompson, one of them said, we'll investigate this thoroughly. Don't worry. But how could I not worry? My home, my life was once again hanging by a thread because of that woman. I returned home exhausted. The lights flickered as I entered, and for a split second, I thought I saw movement near the kitchen window. But when I turned, there was nothing. Maybe it was just my nerves. Or maybe not. That night, I heard a noise. A soft thud outside my bedroom door. Then whispering. Low, muffled voices like someone arguing in the hall. I grabbed a small flashlight from my nightstand and stepped out quietly. The house was dark, except for the faint glow from the living room. And there she was, Olivia, standing by the window, her face half lit, staring at the garden. I froze. She turned slowly when she sensed me. Couldn't sleep either, she said softly, as if she belonged there. My breath caught in my throat. What are you doing in my house? She smiled faintly. I still have the key, remember? I felt rage rise in my chest. Leave, right now. But she didn't move. Instead, she took a step closer, her voice calm, too calm. I just came to talk. Talk. That word sounded almost funny coming from her. Talk about what, Olivia? I asked. About how you tried to sell my home twice. Or maybe about how you forged my husband's name this time. Her smile vanished. She sighed, pretending to look sad. You think you've won, don't you, May? But you don't understand. I did what I had to do. You have no idea what Ethan and I went through. I narrowed my eyes. What you went through? You mean your debts? Your spending? Your lies? She looked away, her voice trembling just slightly. I was trying to fix things. The business failed. We lost everything. I just needed the money to start over. Her tone softened, almost pleading, but I knew manipulation when I heard it. I shook my head. Stealing from family isn't starting over, Olivia. It's destroying what's left. She stepped closer again, her eyes glinting in the dim light. You've always hated me, she whispered. You never wanted me here. You wanted Ethan all to yourself. Her words cut through the room like knives, and for a moment I felt that old ache, the one every mother feels when accused of selfish love. But I didn't let it show. You did that to yourself, I said quietly. You ruined everything. Her expression hardened, and then she said something that made my blood run cold. You may own this house on paper, May, she whispered, but that doesn't mean it's safe. I stared at her, trying to understand if she was threatening me or warning me, but before I could speak, she smiled again, that same fake smile, and turned toward the door. "Good night," she said softly, and walked out into the darkness. The next morning, I found tire marks in the driveway and footprints near the back door. It wasn't just a visit. She'd been searching for something. Called Ethan right away. He didn't answer. When he finally called back hours later, his voice was tired. "Mom, please," he said. "Don't provoke her. She's not stable right now." I couldn't believe my ears. "She broke into my home, Ethan," I shouted. He sighed. "I'll handle it. Just let me talk to her first." But I knew he wouldn't handle it. He was still in denial, still blinded by love. That night I couldn't sleep again. Every creak, every sound made my heart race. I sat by the window clutching Richard's photo, whispering prayers under my breath. I thought of the years we built together, of the promises we made to protect this house, our legacy, and I promised him silently that night I wouldn't let her win. Not again. Not ever. The next day, I went to the local sheriff. I filed a restraining order. He listened carefully, took notes, and nodded. "Don't worry, Mrs. Thompson," he said. "If she steps on your property again, we'll handle it." It was a relief for a moment, but by evening, I received a call that shattered that sense of safety. It was from my neighbor, Mrs. Ellis. She sounded nervous. "May," she said, "I saw someone in your backyard this afternoon. She looked like Olivia." My blood ran cold. I rushed to the window, scanning the yard. Nothing, just the roses swaying in the wind. But I knew she'd been there, watching, waiting, because the next morning when I stepped outside, one of my rose bushes, the one Richard planted for me on our 25th anniversary, had been ripped out of the ground, and on the porch lay an envelope, my name, again. When I opened it, my hands trembled. Inside was a single photo of me standing by the window, taken from outside the night before. No note, no message, just the photo. My heart pounded so hard I thought I'd faint. She was watching me, and she wanted me to know it. That's when I realized this wasn't just about the house anymore. This was personal, a game of fear, and she was enjoying every second of it. But I'd survived too much in life to be broken by her. She wanted war. I was ready to fight back. That photograph haunted me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it. My own face in the window, frozen in fear, captured by someone who wasn't supposed to be there. I stopped sleeping by the window after that. I started locking every door twice. Even the sound of wind brushing against the curtains made me jump. It wasn't just paranoia anymore. It was survival. Margaret came by the next morning. When she saw the picture, her face turned pale. "May, this is harassment," she said. "She's stalking you." I nodded, my hands shaking as I handed her the envelope. "I know, but what can we do? The restraining order isn't even approved yet." She sighed. "We'll need evidence. Real proof that she's been near your property. Keep your phone ready. Record everything." I didn't want to turn my home into a crime scene, but it felt like I had no choice. That night, I set up motion lights around the garden. Every time they flickered, my heart raced. Hours passed, nothing happened, but around 3 a.m. I heard it, the crunch of gravel outside my bedroom window. I moved quietly, peeking through the curtains. A shadow moved near the rose bushes. My breath caught. She was back. Olivia. She wore a hooded jacket and held something shiny in her hand. I couldn't see what it was. Maybe a camera, maybe a knife. I didn't wait to find out. I dialed 911. By the time the police arrived, she was gone, vanished into the night like a ghost. But they found footprints, fresh ones, leading from the backyard to the side fence. The officer looked at me with sympathy. "Don't worry, ma'am," he said. "We'll file a report. But without clear footage, there's not much we can do yet." Not much they could do. Those words made me feel smaller than I'd ever felt before. But they also made me angry. I decided I wouldn't just wait for her to strike again. I'd prepare. The next day, I bought security cameras every corner, every door. I wasn't going to live in fear. This was my house, my life. For 2 days, everything was quiet. Almost too quiet. Then came the email. It arrived on a Sunday morning from an unknown sender. Subject line: "You think you're safe?" My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a single line: "You took everything from me. I'll take it back piece by piece." And below that, a video attachment. Clicked it. The footage was grainy but clear enough. It showed me sleeping in bed. The timestamp was 2 nights ago. My heart stopped. She had been inside the house. I screamed for Margaret, who came rushing over as I played the clip again. "Dear God," she whispered. "May, this isn't just harassment anymore. She's breaking in." We called the sheriff immediately. They promised to send someone to patrol the area that night. But I knew Olivia wouldn't stop until she got what she wanted. The house, the power, the control. I could feel it in my bones. That evening, I sat by the fire, holding the deed in my lap. The paper felt heavier than ever. This wasn't just property. It was my life story, my husband's legacy, and she wanted to erase it. I whispered to Richard's photo on the mantle, "I'll protect what's ours. I promise." Just then the phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated, then picked it up. "Hello." Silence. Then a slow, mocking laugh. "Still fighting, May?" Olivia's voice purred. "You should have just signed the papers when I asked." My throat went dry. dry. Stay away from me, Olivia. The police know everything. She laughed again, louder this time. Oh, May, you really think they can protect you? You're old, alone. By the time they come, it'll be too late. Then the line went dead. I stood there frozen, the phone still pressed against my ear. Her words echoed in my mind. Too late. That night I didn't sleep. I waited in the dark, every muscle tense, the security feed glowing on my laptop screen. And then around 2 a.m. one of the cameras flickered. Front yard. Movement detected. I clicked the feed and there she was, standing at the edge of the driveway, staring straight into the camera. Her hood down, her expression blank. She didn't move for almost a full minute, just stared. Then she lifted her hand and held up a lighter. I ran to the front door, shouting her name. By the time I opened it, she was gone, but the smell of gasoline hit me immediately. I looked down. My front porch was soaked. The police arrived minutes later, lights flashing, sirens breaking the silence of the night. They took samples, recorded statements, promised extra patrol. But inside I knew this wasn't just intimidation anymore. It was escalation. Olivia had lost everything. Her husband, her home, her reputation. And now she wanted me to lose everything too. Ethan came the next day, pale and trembling. He'd heard from the sheriff. Mom, what happened? He asked, gripping my hands. I told him everything, the photo, the video, the lighter. He covered his face, silent for a long time. Then he said quietly, she's not the same person anymore. I don't even recognize her. I placed my hand on his shoulder. You have to make a choice, Ethan. Either she faces the truth, or we all suffer. He nodded slowly, but I saw the war in his eyes, the love that refused to die, even when it turned poisonous. That afternoon, the sheriff called again. They'd found Olivia's car abandoned near the woods outside town. Inside, they discovered her purse, her phone, and a torn piece of paper. It was from my house deed, but at the bottom, she had written something in red ink. If I can't have it, no one will. The words burned into my mind. I knew what they meant. Destruction, finality, and suddenly I realized this was no longer about property or revenge. This was about obsession. A woman who'd rather watch everything burn than admit defeat. I looked out the window at my roses swaying in the wind. A memory of Richard's voice came back to me, calm, steady, certain. When evil hides in your home, May, don't wait for it to leave. You face it. So that's what I decided. The next time Olivia came back, I'd be ready, because this time I wasn't just protecting a house. I was defending my life. After that night, I realized something vital. If I waited for Olivia to make her next move, she'd win. Fear was her weapon, and I had let her use it too long. But not anymore. I was done hiding, done watching, done being the victim in my own home. It was time for her to face me on my terms. The morning after the sheriff's call, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of black coffee. Margaret came over, holding a folder full of documents. Her face was firm, no small talk this time. She's crossed a line, May, she said. We can't just defend anymore. We have to act. I nodded slowly. I know, but we can't go after her blindly. We need her to show her face again, in public, with proof. Margaret leaned in. What are you thinking? I took a deep breath. I'm going to bait her. Margaret blinked. May, that's dangerous. I know, I said quietly, but it's the only way to end this. I explained the plan. We'd let it slip carefully, that I was putting the house on the market myself. Not really selling it, of course, just a rumor. We'd list it under a false pending sale, something she'd see in the local property updates. If Olivia still watched me, and I was certain she did, she'd come back, and when she did, we'd have eyes everywhere. That afternoon, I called a trusted realtor, one Margaret recommended, a kind older man named Henry. I told him everything, except the personal parts. He agreed to list the property discreetly, just enough for Olivia to find out through public channels. Within 2 days, the fake listing was live. Charming countryside home for sale, owner looking to downsize. The description was vague, plain and simple. Now all I had to do was wait. The waiting was the hardest part. Every creak in the house, every gust of wind, felt like her footsteps returning. But I didn't let the fear consume me this time, because this time I was ready. We installed more cameras, hidden ones this time, in the garden, in the hallway near the office. I even set up an old voice recorder inside the living room clock. Margaret stayed the first few nights. She slept on the couch, one hand always on her phone, just in case. It was strange, feeling both terrified and powerful at the same time. 3 nights later, we got our sign. Henry called early in the morning. Mrs. Thompson, he said carefully, someone contacted our office last night asking about your property. She wouldn't give her name, but she mentioned your son, Ethan. My stomach tightened. It was her. What did she say? I asked. She said she wanted to finalize a private deal before the house changes hands. He paused. She also asked if your signature would be required again. Margaret and I exchanged looks. There it was. The bait had worked. We notified the sheriff immediately. They agreed to keep an unmarked car near the property that night. Still, part of me knew Olivia was unpredictable. If she sensed a trap, she'd change her plan. So we had to make it look real. I left the porch lights off. off, left one window slightly open, just enough to make her think she could slip in like before. And then, I waited. The night stretched long and silent. The house ticked with every heartbeat. Around midnight, Margaret dozed off on the couch, but I couldn't close my eyes. Then I heard it, the soft squeak of the back gate. I grabbed my phone, switched to the live feed, and there she was, Olivia, wearing black again, moving slowly through the yard like she'd done it 100 times before. Her face was uncovered this time, cold, focused, determined. She wasn't here to talk. She was here to take something. I stayed still, watching the monitor as she reached the back door. She slipped inside like a thief, every motion deliberate, straight toward my office, where the fake copies of my deed were waiting, planted exactly where she'd expect them. She rifled through the papers quickly, unaware of the small red light blinking above the shelf, the hidden camera. I dialed the sheriff's number silently, whispering, "She's here." They were already on their way. Olivia moved toward the desk, mumbling to herself. Her voice carried through the mic, low and angry. Old witch thought she could outsmart me. Then she paused, her eyes darting toward the living room. That's when she saw me. I stood there, calm, blocking her way out. "Looking for this?" I asked, holding the real deed in my hand. Her face twisted, fear then fury. "You think you've won, don't you?" she hissed. "I didn't move. I didn't win, Olivia. You lost the moment you forgot who this home belonged to." She stepped closer, her expression breaking into something wild. "You ruined my life," she screamed. "You turned Ethan against me." I shook my head slowly. "You did that to yourself. I only protected what was mine." For a moment, I thought she'd lunge at me, but instead she froze, the sound of sirens echoing faintly in the distance. Her eyes flicked toward the window. "No," she whispered. "Not again." When the sheriff's car lights flashed outside, Olivia panicked. She bolted for the back door, but Margaret stepped out from the hallway, blocking her path. "Going somewhere," she said coldly. It was chaos after that. Officers rushing in, shouts echoing through the hall. Olivia's voice cracked as they handcuffed her, yelling, pleading, twisting her story with every word. But the cameras had caught everything. This time, she couldn't deny it. When they took her away, I stood by the window, breathing slowly. The house felt quiet again, but not peaceful. It was the quiet that comes after a storm, the kind that leaves everything standing but changed forever. Margaret touched my shoulder. "It's over," she said softly, but deep down I wasn't sure, because some wounds don't close that easily, especially the ones caused by family. Ethan came by the next day. He looked broken, pale, hollow-eyed, silent. I told him everything, showed him the footage, the police report. He didn't speak for a long time. Then finally, he said quietly, "I'll file for divorce." I saw the tears in his eyes, but there was relief too, the kind that comes from finally letting go of something toxic. I hugged him tight. Neither of us said a word, because there was nothing left to say. That night, for the first time in months, I slept with my window open. The air felt different, lighter. The roses swayed gently outside, and for the first time, the house didn't feel haunted, felt alive again. Still, as I closed my eyes, I couldn't help but wonder, was it really over? Or had Olivia just found a new way to strike from afar? Because people like her, they don't break, they wait. For weeks after Olivia's arrest, the house was finally quiet. Too quiet. I'd wake up to sunlight instead of footsteps. No more strange noises, no more shadows near the garden. It was peaceful, the kind of peace I'd been praying for. But sometimes peace feels like a lie, like a calm surface hiding something dark underneath. Ethan moved in with me temporarily. He needed space, time to process everything. He barely spoke for days. Sometimes I'd catch him staring out the window, lost in thought, whispering her name under his breath. I understood. No matter how much pain someone causes, love doesn't just vanish. It lingers like smoke after a fire. One evening, as we sat at dinner, he finally spoke. "Mom," he said quietly, "they're transferring Olivia to county jail tomorrow." I nodded, setting down my fork. "That's where she belongs." He sighed. I can't believe she did all that. The woman I married, she's gone." I looked at him for a long moment before saying, "Maybe she was never really there, son." The next morning, we went to the sheriff's office to sign the final statements. Margaret came too, holding the legal documents that officially secured the property. It was done. The house was legally untouchable. When we walked out, I felt lighter, like a chain had finally broken off my chest. But as we drove home, something caught my eye. A dark car parked across the street from my house. It had tinted windows. No place. "Do you recognize that vehicle?" I asked Ethan. He squinted. "No, maybe someone visiting the neighbors." But deep down, something felt wrong. A cold prickle crawled up my neck. That night, the house was quiet again. Ethan had gone to bed early. I stayed up reading by the fire, trying to calm my nerves. And then a sound, a faint buzz from my phone, a message from an unknown number. "Did you miss me?" My hands went cold. No name, no image, but I didn't need one. I knew who it was. Olivia. I went to the police first thing the next morning. They confirmed she was still in county custody. "She can't send texts from jail," the officer said firmly. "It's probably someone pretending to be her." her. But the message didn't feel random, felt personal, like she was reaching through the walls, somehow still connected. I tried to shake it off, told myself it was a prank or maybe a coincidence. But then came the second message. Enjoy your roses while you can. That one made my blood run cold. I rushed to the garden. At first, everything looked normal. The bushes were still in bloom, the gate still locked. But when I got closer, I saw it. The soil had been disturbed. A single rose stem cut cleanly from the base. Someone had been there. Ethan came running when he heard me shout, "Mom, what's wrong?" I showed him the empty spot in the garden bed. His face went pale. "She can't be here. She's in custody." But I wasn't so sure anymore, because sometimes revenge doesn't need hands. It only needs followers. 2 days later, Margaret showed up looking tense. "May," she said, closing the door behind her. I checked the court filings. Olivia's lawyer submitted a petition. I frowned. A petition? For what? To claim marital assets, Margaret said. She's arguing that since she and Ethan are still legally married, she's entitled to half of everything, including this house. I felt my chest tighten. Even after all she did? She's manipulative, Margaret said grimly. She knows how to twist the system. Ethan sat silently on the couch, his hands shaking. "She's trying to ruin us all over again," he muttered. I placed my hand over his. "No, son. She's trying to scare us, and I won't let her." We decided to fight back hard. Margaret gathered evidence, videos, police reports, witness statements. It took days, but by Friday we had everything we needed. I was ready to face her in court if it came to that. But Olivia was always one step ahead. That night, as I was locking the front door, I noticed an envelope on the porch. No postage, just my name. Inside there was no letter, just a photo. Me and Ethan, sitting in the dining room that very morning. The picture had been taken through the kitchen window. I felt my breath catch. Someone had been outside, watching us, listening. I showed it to Ethan. He grabbed his phone immediately and called the sheriff. They sent a patrol car to check the area, but found nothing. No footprints, no tire marks, just silence. But I couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't far away. Maybe she'd found a way to get messages out, or maybe someone else was helping her. Margaret stayed with us that night. None of us slept. The house creaked with every gust of wind. Every shadow felt alive. Around 2 a.m. we heard something. A soft knock. 3 slow taps on the back door. We froze. Ethan grabbed a flashlight. I dialed 911. The knocking came again, louder this time. Then silence. By the time the police arrived, whoever it was had vanished. The only thing they found was a small locket on the porch. Inside it was a tiny photo of Olivia and Ethan from their wedding day. I don't know why, but that broke me. Seeing that image, once filled with love, now drenched in hate, made everything real again. This wasn't random. This was obsession. The sheriff promised to increase patrols, but I could see it in his eyes. Even he wasn't sure how far she'd go. When he left, Margaret turned to me and whispered, "May, this isn't just revenge anymore. It's possession. She wants to own your fear." And she was right. Olivia wasn't just trying to take my house anymore. She was trying to take me. The next morning, I woke up to find every rose in the garden cut down. Not stolen, not destroyed, just severed at the stem. All of them. And pinned to the front door was a single note. "You can't guard what's already mine." The handwriting was unmistakable. Olivia. I stood there, staring at that note, the morning sun casting a cruel light over the empty garden. My heart ached, not with fear this time, but with fury. She wanted a war? Then she'd get one. Because this house, this life, this peace was mine. And I was done being hunted. That morning, standing among the ruined roses, something inside me changed. For months, I had lived in fear of Olivia's threats, her lies, her shadow that wouldn't fade. But fear had done nothing but feed her power. No more. If she wanted to play games, I'd end them, once and for all. Margaret arrived a few hours later, still in her nightgown, clutching her briefcase. The look on her face when she saw the roses was pure horror. "May, she did this?" I nodded. She left another note. Same handwriting. Margaret sighed heavily. "She's crossing every boundary now. The restraining order, the police, none of it's working." Her voice dropped low. "We have to end this legally and publicly in court. It's the only way she'll lose control." We spent the day gathering everything, security footage, text messages, photos, every threatening note. I even printed the emails she'd sent before her arrest. The sheriff arranged a formal meeting with the district attorney. They agreed to reopen her case with new charges: stalking, harassment, and property damage. That gave me some relief. But that night, as the sun sank, I still felt watched, like her presence lingered somewhere unseen. Ethan was quieter than ever. He barely ate. Every time her name came up, his jaw clenched. Finally, I couldn't stand it anymore. "Ethan," I said gently, "you need to talk to me." He looked up, eyes tired. "She's still my wife, Mom. I know she's done terrible things, but part of me still wants to believe she can be saved." I reached across the table and took his hand. "Some people don't want saving, son. They want control." He didn't respond, just stared at the table, lost in thought. Later that evening, as I cleaned the kitchen, I heard a strange sound outside, the crunch of tires on gravel. Headlights flashed briefly across the living room window. I peeked through the curtain. A dark car, the same one I'd seen before, idled near the mailbox. My heart raced. I whispered, "Ethan." He joined me at the window just as the car door opened. A man stepped out, tall, heavyset, wearing a baseball cap. He dropped something in the mailbox, then drove away. Ethan ran outside before I could stop him. When he came back, he was holding a small brown envelope. Inside were two things, a burner phone and a note. "You'll answer when I call." We turned the phone into the sheriff the next morning. They took it for evidence, promising to trace it, but I could see the uncertainty in their eyes. Olivia was always a step ahead, even behind bars. By evening, I felt my nerves unraveling. I couldn't eat, couldn't rest. The silence of the house felt alive, listening, waiting. That's when the landline rang. I froze. No one used the landline anymore. Picked it up slowly. "Hello." There was static first, then her voice. "Miss me?" For a second I couldn't breathe. "Olivia." She laughed, low and bitter. "I heard about your fancy little case against me. Cute. You think papers and lawyers can stop me?" I gripped the receiver, my voice trembling but steady. "You're in custody. You can't even be making this call." "Oh, May," she whispered, almost mocking. "You really don't understand, do you? Some people would do anything for a favor." The line clicked, then went dead. I stood there in the dark, heart pounding. If she was calling me, it meant someone was helping her. Someone outside. The next morning confirmed it. Margaret called with a tremor in her voice. "May, I just got word. Olivia was transferred to a hospital for evaluation. She's out of jail temporarily." The room spun around me. "What? It's legal," Margaret said bitterly. "Her lawyer claims she's having a psychological breakdown. She's in a minimum security facility, not behind bars. So she's free," I whispered. "Temporarily," Margaret said. "But be careful. You know how cunning she is." I hung up and felt my blood run cold. Olivia was out, and if I knew her at all, she wouldn't waste a single moment. Ethan didn't take the news well. He slammed his hands on the counter. "She's manipulating everyone. Again." "Yes," I said quietly, "and that means she's planning something." For 2 days, nothing happened. Then one evening, I got a call from my neighbor, Mrs. Ellis. "May," she said nervously, "someone's been parking near your driveway again. Same black car, same man." I thanked her, hung up, and called the sheriff. They sent another patrol car, but the vehicle was gone when they arrived. No trace. That night, I couldn't sit still. I checked every window, every lock. Ethan sat by the fireplace, holding his head in his hands. "She's not going to stop, is she?" he muttered. "No," I said. "Not until she gets what she came for." Just past midnight, the lights flickered. Then darkness. The house went completely black. I heard Ethan curse softly. "Power's out." I reached for the flashlight on the table. Before I could turn it on, a faint orange glow appeared outside, near the shed. I ran to the window. Flames. The shed was on fire. Ethan and I rushed outside, shouting for help. The flames spread fast, licking the dry wood, climbing toward the trees. He grabbed a hose, trying to fight it, but it was useless. Within minutes, the shed collapsed into glowing embers. I backed away, coughing from the smoke, and then I saw it, something glinting near the gate. A lighter, engraved with the initials OT, Olivia Thompson. The fire department arrived minutes later. They put out the flames, checked for accelerants. The sheriff looked grim. "Someone poured gasoline all over this place. You were lucky you woke up in time." I stared at the smoldering ashes. That shed had belonged to Richard. It held his tools, his workbench, decades of memories. Now it was gone, burned to nothing. And in that moment, something inside me hardened completely. "I'm done waiting," I told the sheriff. "I want her charged for everything. No more chances. No more mercy." He nodded slowly. "We'll find her, Mrs. Thompson. I promise." But promises don't rebuild what's been destroyed. When the officers left, I stood in the yard alone, staring at the last flickers of smoke rising into the night sky. The roses were covered in ash. The air smelled of loss. And as the embers cooled, I realized something chilling. This was never just about revenge for Olivia. It was about erasing me. The morning after the fire, the air still smelled like smoke and endings. The yard was blackened. The roses wilted with ash. Ethan stood silently beside me, staring at the charred remains of the shed that once belonged to his father. He whispered, "She did this." I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The truth was already burning in front of us. The sheriff called later that afternoon. They had issued a warrant for Olivia's arrest. She'd left the psychiatric facility 2 nights ago under a temporary release, but she never returned. "She's considered missing," the sheriff said. "But if she contacts you, call us immediately." I hung up numb. Missing? No, she wasn't missing. She was hunting. Margaret came over as soon as she heard. Her face was pale, but her voice was firm. "May, we need to get you out of this house for a few days. Stay with me. Let the police handle this." But I shook my head. "This is my home, Margaret. I've run from her long enough. I won't leave again." She frowned. "Then at least least let Ethan stay close. Ethan nodded silently. He wasn't leaving me, not this time. That evening, I sat by the window again. The house was too quiet. Every creak, every shift in the wind sounded like footsteps. I held Richard's photo in my lap and whispered, "I wish you were here, love. I wish you could see what she's done." For a brief moment, I almost thought I heard his voice, a whisper from the past. "Stand tall, May. Protect what's yours." I closed my eyes, drawing strength from that memory, and when I opened them again, I saw movement outside. A figure, standing by the gate. I froze. The shape was unmistakable, tall, slender, hair falling to her shoulders. Olivia. She wasn't hiding this time. She just stood there, staring straight at the house. I whispered, "Ethan." He came running, but by the time he reached the window, she was gone. He ran outside, shouting her name into the fog. No answer, just silence. When he came back in, his face was pale. She left something on the gate. He held up a white envelope sealed with a smudge of ash. Inside, there was a handwritten note. Short, sharp, terrifying. "You can rebuild everything, May, but I can always burn it down again." Ethan crushed the paper in his hands. "She's insane." I felt my throat tighten, my pulse racing. "She's obsessed." We gave the note to the sheriff the next morning. He promised to increase surveillance. Still, I could see it in his eyes. He was worried. "People like her don't stop until they get what they want," he said quietly. "Be careful, Mrs. Thompson." I wanted to laugh. Be careful? I've been careful. And look where it got me. That night, Ethan insisted on sleeping downstairs near the main door. I stayed in my room, though sleep didn't come. Around midnight, the motion sensor light flicked on. I sat up instantly. My heart pounded. I checked the camera feed on my tablet. Nothing but static. Then a faint sound. A woman's voice. Soft, whispering. "May." It came from right outside the window. I froze. That voice. That tone. It was her. I stood slowly and reached for the phone, but before I could dial, I saw her face, just for a second, reflected in the glass. Smiling, then gone. I screamed Ethan's name. He rushed in, flashlight in hand, running to the yard. But again, nothing. No footprints. No sign of her. It was like chasing a ghost. The next day, the sheriff confirmed the worst. They'd found Olivia's hospital wristband in the woods behind my property. She was living nearby, hiding, waiting. "We'll find her soon," he promised. "Just stay alert." But how do you stay alert when danger wears the face of someone you once called family? That evening, Margaret came by with a small package. "Security company sent this," she said. "A panic alarm. Keep it near you at all times." She looked around the room, her eyes landing on the old family photos. "You know, May, she's not just after the house. She wants to erase your existence from this place. That's what this is about." I swallowed hard. "I know." Margaret's eyes softened. "But she doesn't know one thing." "What's that?" I asked. "You're stronger than she'll ever be." Later that night, I sat alone in the living room. The fire crackled softly, shadows dancing across the walls. For the first time, I didn't feel scared. I felt angry. Olivia had taken so much, my peace, my garden, my memories, but she hadn't taken me. I wasn't the helpless old woman she thought I was, so I decided to take back control. I called the sheriff first. "I have an idea," I told him. "If she wants to come for me, I'll give her a reason and a place." We arranged it carefully. A sting of sorts. One last chance to end this. I'd leave the house for the weekend, letting the word spread that I'd gone to stay with relatives. But in truth, I'd stay, quietly hidden with officers nearby and cameras rolling. If Olivia showed up again, this time they'd catch her. No more second chances. No more running. The plan was set. Friday night, the house went dark. The porch light off, curtains drawn. Ethan and I waited in silence, tension thick in the air. Hours passed. Then, around 2:30 a.m., we heard it. The crunch of footsteps on the gravel path. Ethan looked at me. I nodded. We both knew who it was. Through the thin crack in the curtain, I saw her. Olivia. Her hair was wild, her face pale, eyes burning with something I couldn't name. Rage, maybe, or madness. She held a small gas can in one hand and a lighter in the other. My stomach turned cold. She wasn't here to threaten this time. She was here to end it. Ethan whispered, "Mom, we have to move." I shook my head. "Not yet." We waited as she stepped onto the porch. She knelt, unscrewing the gas can lid. That's when the sirens exploded through the silence. Police cars surrounded the property in seconds, red and blue lights flooding the yard. Olivia froze, dropping the can, turning like a trapped animal. She screamed, "You can't take it from me," as officers rushed toward her. Her voice cracked, wild with fury and heartbreak. And then just like that, it was over. They pulled her to the ground, handcuffed her, and led her away. This time, there was no escape. I stood at the window, shaking, watching the woman who had haunted me for months finally disappear into the flashing lights. Ethan wrapped his arm around me, whispering, "It's done, Mom. It's really done." I wanted to believe him, but as I looked out at the dark horizon, I couldn't help but wonder, when someone like Olivia loses everything, does she ever really stop fighting? Or does the hate just find another way to live? The night Olivia was taken away, the whole street glowed red and blue from the flashing lights. I stood by by the porch trembling as officers swarmed the yard. For a moment I couldn't move. It felt unreal, like watching a nightmare unravel right in front of me. Ethan was beside me, pale and silent, his hands shaking. I looked at him, my heart breaking for my son. No mother should have to see her child's world crumble like this. The sheriff approached, his face grave but relieved. "She's in custody, Mrs. Thompson. We caught her pouring gasoline on your porch. The video evidence and prior reports will make this case airtight." I nodded slowly. "Is she saying anything?" He sighed. "Not much. She kept repeating your name. Said you stole her life." Those words hit me like a slap. Stole her life? She had stolen mine over and over again, and yet she still believed she was the victim. It was terrifying, the kind of delusion that bends reality. By morning, the news had spread. Neighbors came by, whispering, shaking their heads in disbelief. Mrs. Ellis brought me muffins, bless her heart, and said, "I knew that woman had something evil in her eyes." I smiled politely, but inside I was hollow. Evil. That word lingered. Was it evil, or pain twisted too long without help? I didn't know anymore. Olivia's hearing was scheduled for the following week. Margaret came over daily to help with paperwork and statements. Her presence was my anchor, steady, calm, and unbreakable. Ethan, though, was fading. He barely ate, barely spoke. He'd sit by the window, staring at nothing for hours. One evening, I found him outside, sitting by the ruins of the shed. His face was streaked with tears. "Son," I said softly, "you don't have to keep torturing yourself." He looked up, eyes red. "I just don't understand, Mom. How did the woman I loved become this?" I knelt beside him, taking his hand. "She didn't become it, Ethan. It was always there. You just loved her too much to see it." He nodded slowly, his voice breaking. "I still can't believe she tried to kill you." I squeezed his hand tighter. "She failed. That's what matters now." The days passed in a blur. Reporters called. Police checked in. Lawyers drafted statements. And through it all, I kept asking myself, how had it come to this? A family torn apart by greed. A home nearly destroyed by hatred. All because one person couldn't stand not having control. Sometimes, when I walked through the house, I still half expected to hear her voice, sweet, calm, deceiving. "Mom, can you sign this real quick?" The memory made my stomach twist. The night before her hearing, I couldn't sleep. The house was too still, too quiet. I went to the kitchen for tea, and as I passed the window, I stopped. The roses, for the first time in months, they were blooming again. New buds, small but alive, pushing through the ash and ruin. I smiled through tears. Richard used to say, "You can't bury love, May. It grows back stronger." I whispered, "You were right, love. You were right." The next morning, we went to court. The hallways smelled of cold air and coffee. When they brought Olivia in, I almost didn't recognize her. Her hair was messy, her eyes wild but hollow. She looked smaller, weaker, but still dangerous. That same sharpness flickered behind her brokenness. She didn't look at Ethan. Not once. But when she saw me, she smiled, slow and eerie. The judge read the charges aloud. Attempted arson, fraud, forgery, stalking, criminal harassment. Each word felt like a nail sealing a coffin. Olivia's lawyer spoke about her mental state, her emotional distress, her desperation. I almost pitied her, almost, because I knew that even brokenness couldn't excuse the evil she'd done. When it was my turn to speak, I stood slowly. My knees shook, but my voice didn't. "Your Honor," I began, "this isn't about property. It's about peace. This woman didn't just try to steal my home. She tried to destroy everything my husband and I built. And when she failed, she tried to destroy me." I paused, letting the silence settle. Then I looked at Olivia. "But I'm still here." Her eyes flinched just slightly. "I don't want revenge," I said softly. "I just want to live without fear. Please don't let her hurt anyone else the way she hurt this family." The courtroom was silent. Even the judge looked moved. After a long pause, he nodded. "Mrs. Thompson, thank you. That was brave." The gavel came down hard. The decision was clear. Guilty on all counts. Psychiatric monitoring, followed by state imprisonment. It was over. Finally, outside the courthouse, the air felt different. Lighter. Like the sky itself had been waiting to exhale. Margaret hugged me tightly. "It's done, May. She can't hurt you anymore." Ethan stood beside me, eyes full of pain and relief all at once. He whispered, "She used to be my whole world. Now I don't even recognize her voice." I touched his cheek gently. "Maybe now, son, you can start building a new one." That night we returned home. The fire crackled softly. The air smelled of lavender and peace. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in Richard's old chair by the window. For the first time, I didn't flinch at the creaks or the shadows. The fear was gone. Completely. But as I watched the moonlight spill across the garden, I felt something else. Not fear. Not anger. Just sorrow. Because no matter how much justice you get, betrayal leaves a mark that never fades. I looked at the roses again, blooming, bright, defiant, and I whispered, "We survived, love, but it cost everything." Then I looked up at the dark sky and let a tear fall. Not for Olivia, not for myself, but for what could have been if love had been enough. It's been 6 months since the trial ended. 6 months since the sirens stopped echoing down my driveway. driveway. 6 months since I saw her face, pale, defiant, and lost. And in that time, I've learned something simple. Peace doesn't come when the noise ends. It comes when you decide not to let the past speak louder than your heartbeat. The house feels different now. Not haunted, not heavy, just still. Every morning, I make tea and sit by the window where I used to watch for her shadow. Now I watch the sunlight dance on the roses that somehow found the courage to grow again. Nature has a strange kind of wisdom. It rebuilds quietly without asking permission. Sometimes I think that's what I've done too. Ethan has been healing little by little. He sold his old business, started working with a local architecture firm. It's good for him, something new, something clean. He laughs again now, though it's softer than before, like a man who's learned how fragile peace can be. One evening, we sat by the porch as the sun dipped low. He turned to me and said, "Mom, do you ever think she'll change?" I smiled sadly. "People like Olivia don't change, son. They just find new mirrors to lie to." He nodded, his eyes distant. "But I still hope. Someday she understands what she destroyed." I understood what he meant. Hope isn't for the guilty. It's for the ones who need to forgive. Not to excuse what happened, but to finally breathe again. Some nights I walk the halls and run my hands along the walls Richard built. Each scar in the paint, each worn step on the stairs, they remind me we survived. That no matter how deep the cracks went, the foundation held. Because love built this home, and hate couldn't break it. Last week, I got a letter from the correctional facility. It was from Olivia. The handwriting was shaky but unmistakable. For a long time, I couldn't bring myself to open it, but curiosity, or maybe closure, won. Inside was a single page. It read, "You took everything from me, but I finally understand why you fought so hard to keep that house. Because when you lose your home, you lose yourself. I'm sorry, May, but I don't know who I am anymore." I stared at those words for a long time, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt pity, because she was right. She'd lost herself long before she ever came for my home. I burned the letter that evening, not out of hate, but to let it end. As the ashes curled into the night air, I whispered, "Rest, Olivia. Wherever your soul wanders, rest." The wind carried the ashes away like dust from an old wound. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened every window in the house, let the air sweep through the rooms, lifting the stale memories away. The scent of roses filled the halls again, soft, pure, alive. I walked through each room, the kitchen where she'd lied, the hallway where she'd watched me, the living room where I'd finally faced her, and I smiled, not because I'd won, but because I'd endured. That afternoon, Ethan joined me in the garden. He was quiet at first, then he said softly, "Dad would be proud of you." I looked at the sky and smiled. "I think so too." We planted a new rosebush that day, right where the old ones had burned, bright red like fire turned into life again. When I pressed the soil over its roots, I felt something lift inside me, the final piece of fear finally letting go. Now when I walk through this home, I don't see shadows anymore. I see proof that even after betrayal, destruction, and madness, life can still bloom. This house has survived storms, fire, and cruelty, but it's still standing, and so am I. I often tell myself this: people can steal things, forge papers, burn walls, but they can't take away what's rooted in love. They can't steal peace unless you let them, and I won't, not ever again. So when the sun sets and the air turns gold, I sit by the porch with my tea and whisper, "This house is mine, my past, my pain, my victory." And in the distance, I swear I can almost hear Richard's voice again, calm and proud. "You did it, May. You kept it safe." Because in the end, the house didn't just belong to me, it was me, and no one, not even Olivia, could take that away.